When Zach first started here, he looked at me and said, you don't need to come to work at 6 o'clock in the morning anymore. I got it. I'm used to not having the owner here. My last business for 10 years, the owners were absentee, and I just had the most shocked response. I was like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life? So that's been great. So just even that little bit of freedom, just waking up and hanging around a little bit around the house, and often with the computer in front of me doing some things, but still just not being here and in the throes and being able to work on the business now, because there was so many times before Zach that I had a goal of doing more traction and getting the EOS implemented, but I didn't have any time to implement it. I was so much in the business.
Welcome to Peer Talk, a dialogue with business owners just like you. Peer Talk's conversations run the gamut of business challenges facing owners today. The host of Peer Talk is Dan Crowley, founder and owner of Peer Executive Groups, which provides a safe space for owners to share their experience, grow their businesses, and learn from their peers.
Hi, this is Dan Crowley. We have a number of great owners in our peer group network, just like you, and our job is to give you a voice here on Peer Talk.
Peer Tech is a proud sponsor of Peer Talk. Are your results actionable? View your industry data like never before. Gain insights, view real-time KPIs, drive growth, unlock potential. When you join Peer Tech, your data drives decisions. Peer benchmarking allows you to see your data like never before. Why be satisfied with incomplete data when clear, responsive, real-time trends could be yours? Now is the time to start making insightful, data-driven decisions for your business. Peer Tech. Our guest today on Peer Talk is Beth Hoff Blackmer from Aspen Rent-All in Basalt, Colorado. Beth is a 15-year or so member of Peer Executive Groups. She has chaired her group in the past. She also has been a regional chair at the American Rental Association, as well as the national president. At that stage, she also was crucial in being part of the Women in Rental Committee, and now they have an annual event. Also, 7-time included in the top 100 women-owned businesses in Colorado. So today we will be hearing from Beth on her annual planning thoughts. Welcome to another edition of Peer Talk. I am very excited for 2023, as I hope you are as well. Today we have a very special podcast. We're going to be speaking with Beth Hoff Blackmer. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be here with you.
Excellent. Beth is going to focus our discussion around annual planning and getting prepared for 2023. She and I have been back and forth on a number of items around planning, and so we're very excited to share with you some concepts you should probably keep in mind. And for those of you who know Beth, Beth at Aspen Rent-All has served in volunteer leadership for a long time with the American Rental Association, even taking on the president role. I think it was 2 years ago, right? Now it's been.
Yes, I was the pandemic president.
The pandemic president. I love that. Oh my gosh. She has been a longstanding member of Peer Executive Groups, has been active with her group Rat Bag for,
since 2008.
2008. Excellent. Wow. So this will be the 15th year.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive. Okay. So with that, Beth, why don't you tell us a little bit about your origin story? Give us a little bit on the company and then also how you got involved and your past with it.
Okay. My dad started Aspen Rent-All in April of 1967. He had been a traveling salesperson, and Mom needed him to be home a little bit more with 3 young kids. So he looked in the yellow pages in Denver and saw the concept and came up here and started the business. So I grew up with the business being around, but I never really worked in it at all. I helped him do billing and things in high school. So fast forward to 1999, I'm back here living in the area, and his manager started having some health issues and was going to need to leave the valley, the altitude, within about 18 months. So my dad was preparing to sell the business and people were talking about it. And but 2 gentlemen came up to me, happened to be on a bike ride in Europe, and they said I should take over this business. And I sort of laughed. I thought, I don't know the first thing about construction. So, but thought about it and then talked to my dad, and it was decided that I would do it and I would buy it from him because there were other siblings. So I wouldn't have any partners that I didn't want to have to deal with if they weren't going to be working here. So I became the owner of Aspen Rental in January of 2000. We are a single location construction equipment rental only. We have tables and chairs for like 50 people, but that's about it in the event side. And it's been a great run. I grew the business a lot in the early 2000s, then had a very difficult recession like many others, and then have been growing the business mostly double digits since about 2012. So, and I've just finished 2 years of very big growth.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, we're excited that you are back at it. And obviously, when you're out on the road representing the American Rental Association, it gives you a chance to meet with a lot of other rental operations. That's true.
Yeah, in my time on the board, I was actually Region 7 director from 2012 to 2015. So the area out here is quite spread out and not a whole lot of stores, but every time I had a chance, I got on the road and visited people in Utah and Colorado and Arizona, New Mexico, and Wyoming. And that was great to first start seeing stores. Obviously, in the peer group, we go to each other's stores. So every time I'm ever in a store there, I just always learn something. I take pictures. I get a great idea from other people. And then I was asked to come in and run for president, which I did do and succeeded at. So I was elected as president-elect in 2019 and then president and chair. So in that 3-year period on the national board as an officer, I did also have an opportunity to see quite a few stores, talk to a lot of people. Certainly through the pandemic, we were focused on trying to help the event people the best that we could. Spoke to a lot of legislators then. So that was a pretty amazing event to be on the phone with these people in Washington that I would have never had any contact with. And also just the level of rental people that I got to know in that time was really great.
Yeah, I mean, it was great for me. I was able to see you through that whole period, kind of grow as a business owner and see things differently. Clearly, you were on a path of education and knowledge building for the entire period of time. And of course, that never ends. But, understanding different elements of your business. I remember a meeting where, you were trying to understand your financials and it was really getting you down. And then I remember, like, what, 7 years later, you're in Top Gun, right? So it was like, okay, we've seen one extreme to another, and that's the beauty of a peer group, being able to follow people on their journeys. Now, regarding today's topic of annual planning, one of the things I want us to talk about is the fact that it's not like you just start with 2023. Hey, we got 12 months. What's going to happen in those 12 months? Certainly you want to get there, but let's also take a bigger perspective on this discussion. So first things first, life goals, right? So considering every owner in the rental industry has life goals outside their work goals, or we would hope they would, it will drive different decision making in your business. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your life goals? You don't have to go in deep, just some general, what is it that you aspire to and you have interest in on your daily activity?
Yeah, and I can say that as the years go on, those have changed a lot. I was until about uh, 14 months ago, I was pretty driven to keep in this business and grow it and see it be successful as it is being successful, but to continue driving the bus. And I had a tough year in 21. I was working 80 hours a week. I had staffing issues and I had that moment. I don't know how much more of this I have in me. I don't know how many more I'm gonna. When you're dealing with them staffing, especially losing a key player who you thought was going to be your right hand for years to come, that was a bit backbreaking. So that definitely got me to reevaluate my goals. And also at the same time, my husband retired in 21, which was in the game plan for years. So I knew that was going to happen. And I thought, I'm not retiring. Well, once he's not working every day and talking to you, you go, maybe that's not a bad thing. So I started down the road about November of last year, starting to look into succession planning. So I set the goal to kind of have for 22 to get that coordinated. How would that look? We can go into more depth on that. But also, I think that I got a key hire. Thankfully, right after losing an important person, I landed a great guy who's been here since September of last year, who has taken over my day-to-day operations fabulously. So he's really freed me up. So I've gone from sort of the worst of my 80-hour weeks to now I'm under 40 easily, which has allowed me to have a much more balanced lifestyle.
That's excellent. That's good to hear. And, we hear about everybody working on their business in different ways and using different systems for doing it. You are a fan of Traction, and you've read EOS. And so I think that also can provide the framework to set somebody up for success in that role, right? Because they're starting to do it. So for life goals, we know every business owner wants financial freedom. They're building their business. They want to have some financial freedom beyond a paycheck, but they also want some personal freedom, and that varies. So some people are like, hey, next 5 years, I'm going to be committed, going to work 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week, whatever it might be. But then eventually you get to the place where you're like, hey, I may need some more me time for this to really continue into the future. So personal freedom versus financial freedom. So you feel like that has changed over the last 3 to 5 years for you?
Absolutely. There was definitely a time after the recession that I was quite cash poor, as you know, because you used to see my financials on a regular basis. And I had lines of credit and things going, and used my home equity line. I mean, it was all being used. And for everybody that's been an entrepreneur, that's a painful thing. That keeps you up at night type of thing. And I am just so happy that through you and other rental people and Ami Kassar, came up with a solution on getting that figured out. Obviously, it helped that the business was growing, but I was able to get my cash flow back in line and now have a lot of that. So the financial freedom is easy now. It makes me feel good if we have a downturn now. I'm prepared versus in 2008. I did not think I would have the downturn I did. So yeah, and then but the freedom for me was, I really don't want to be here with this new hire whose name is Zach. When Zach first started here, he looked at me and said, you don't need to come to work at 6 o'clock in the morning anymore. I got it. I'm used to not having the owner here. My last business for 10 years, the owners were absentee, and I just had the most shocked response. I was like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life? So that's been great. So just even that little bit of freedom, just waking up and hanging around a little bit around the house, and often with the computer in front of me doing some things, but still just not being here and in the throes and being able to work on the business now, because there was so many times before Zach that I had a goal of doing more traction and getting the EOS implemented, but I didn't have any time to implement it. I was so much in the business. So
Totally hear that.
It's really exciting now that he's excited as well as my other manager to really go down the path with that in our planning for this next year.
So what we do when we do annual planning is we ask for people to kind of ground it in a point on the horizon. So annual is 1 year, but it has to live inside a context of a bigger picture. So, I always say, where are you going to be in 10 years? And I like to make that extremely painful for people. I'm going to be 65 years old in 10 years. Am I still going to be active in peer groups? what am I doing with my regular time? The good news for me is most of our facilitators are at least that age. So no, I'm kidding. But seriously, they are. So anyway, we're able to like create a path for consultant and support and facilitation well into our later years. But when it's a business owner running a business, if they are stuck behind the counter, it can be brutal, right? So that's the first plan, is where are you going to be in 10 years? Then we go to a 3 to 5 year period. So have you given much thought to, I'm not going to even put you on the spot with the 10-year, but have you thought about like 3 to 5 years and what it might be like to run Aspen Rental?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have exciting news because I do have a game plan, because that person, Zach, is going to become a minority owner in about 4 days.
Wow.
So
Very
he
nice.
is ready to go and coming in. And he and I have a plan. Our plan is for me to be here for 36 months for the transition time, and make sure he's got the day-to-day operation stuff figured out, but also how to put, what the working on side of the business is. So very excited about that, as is he. He's excited to have a opportunity to be a business owner, not just to have a job. And the game plan starting in the middle of last summer, when I found out he was interested. I didn't talk any money at the time, but just did the fishing expedition, whether he had any interest in becoming an owner. He was very excited about that. I had known prior to that he had hoped to buy a business before he found me last year. So I knew that he had that mentality that he was, business owner versus just coming in as manager always. So the goal this last summer, when we decided to go down the path, was that he would actually become 100% owner in a couple days. But some advice from many peer industry peer people, as well as folks that I just know in the business world here, were sort of like, maybe slow that down a little. So if he comes in and we do have a downturn economically, he's strapped. He will have spent every bit of penny that he has to buy this business, and he won't have any backup. So I was fine with that and talked with him, and he agreed that would be better and less risk for the business and for him. So that's when we decided to just do a partial for a 36-month period. So he is going to continue to take over the day-to-day, and he and the other manager are going to be equally doing the front and the back of the business as they do now. One oversees all the equipment and the service and mechanic side, and he oversees the front side, customers, and all of the billing side of the business. I'm very excited that I actually really have a pretty clear 3-year goal now. And the plan is, in 3 years, he will get this place valued again, and he'll either say, yay, it's a good go for me and I want to go forward, or not. And I will make the plan at that point. But so I think I will be out in 36 months. But I also think that I'll have a lot more free time in those 36 months to do other things in my life, travel, and
Very cool.
do other involvement.
So I love it. So you have a point on the horizon. That's amazing. It's a big difference from many of the operators in the peer group network. They don't necessarily think that specifically. So by thinking specifically like that, it allows you to kind of look at the calendar and start to say, what should be done by what time, and how do I go about doing it? So good for you on that. Let's look at the 12-month scenario and say, where do we start? So how we like to start, ideally, and not everybody has the ability to do this, is to really find out about the health of their team. So some ways that we do that is we might do employee surveying, we might do DISC or behavioral profiling. I believe that you've brought in consultants or talked to consultants over the years. Have you done something like this where you've kind of gotten a sense of being able to interview your employees or review them and have one-on-ones with them?
Absolutely. So I've done a couple different things, but for a few years, I worked with Predictive Index, and we did a lot of culture work and training around on that. And the cost for me at this point, with having thankfully, very little turnover, employee wise, now I'm really only hiring maybe 2 people a year. So it didn't really make sense for me to go forward. But I think it's showed us how to work. So I think, down the road here, I know that you guys are strongly doing the disc stuff. So, I certainly plan to borrow, get a hold of you all when I need some review and people doing disc, and then new team players, they come in. And so they continue to see how to work with different types of people, because I think that is critical. So yeah, so that for sure. And then just going down the path with the planning for this annual review that we're going to get into, game planning and doing the L10 meetings, which is a weekly meeting for those that aren't in that world. The 3 of us, and just really setting those agendas and each week following them. And that,
so you're referring, when you say the 3 of us, you're referring to your leadership team.
Yes.
You and 2 others. Okay, great.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. And that's awesome. So you're already very familiar with the EOS nomenclature, the traction words and things like that. So essentially, talking about having regular meetings about the business, and essentially working on some big rocks, or kind of coaching your employees to think like an owner. That's awesome. So finding out where your employees stand is an excellent place for people to start with annual plan, because it's hard to plan without making sure everybody's behind you, right? You're going down the road, right? So you want the employees to follow you there. So the next thing that we like to look at, and tell me your feelings on this, we like to do kind of a SWOT analysis. So we're going to look internally at your business and understand your strengths and weaknesses. And certainly it's always a fun exercise with your leadership team. But then we also look at what's trending, what's happening out in the market as far as the economy goes. What are the opportunities and threats that we see? What's going on in rental? Oh my gosh, look at all the electric stuff. Bigger pieces of fleet, smaller pieces of fleet. Where are we going with this? So that seems to be a really nice step in the annual process. Would you agree? Have you guys done stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, although I had some issues with the employee and the one that's still here, the one that left. I couldn't get them to really grasp the concept of meeting, and they just thought that it was a bit silly to sit around and talk about things when they just needed to work. They were busy with what they were doing at that moment. And so I'm really encouraged now to kind of have a different mindset from them. I think having the employee survey will be fantastic. They all just got notified this past week of the change that's going to take place.
Wow.
On January 1st. And so Zach's made a plan to meet with each of them individually by himself in the coming week, or next week, just to figure out where they're at with him and the business and stuff. So I've just done year-end reviews with everybody, so I kind of know where everybody's at. But he wants to do it now that they've got this. The knowledge I think that'll be good. And then doing the survey with you, I think that'll just give us a better platform for what we need to plan for this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, really, it's amazing, because if you think about it, so much of planning actually doesn't have anything to do with planning. It has to do with really uncovering and understanding your existing situation. So whether it's with your employees and their attitudes, their morale, things like that, and then also with the SWOT, understanding what's going on with your competitors, what's going on with the industry and the economy, and all those pieces, obviously technology and fleet change, that kind of thing. So you're kind of getting a big giant brainstorming session going, and at that point, there's one piece that's missing, and that is to really understand your financials, right? So what does that look for you? Why don't you walk us through how you do your income statement and balance sheet? Like, are you the bookkeeper, or do you have someone doing that for you? And then also, if we want to review your financials over the last 3 years, are you committed to looking at, peer group and benchmarking, or what? So give me a little story on your financial situation.
Well, yeah, I spend a lot of time in them, and I can tell you, as you know very well, that back in the day, they were really perplexing to me, and I just couldn't figure out how I was supposed to get to, a healthier place. And so, yeah, I've definitely um, become much more attached to looking at them regularly rather than throwing them in the drawer and hope it all comes out at the end of the year. But I do have a fantastic bookkeeper who is remote. So she has been with me now for about almost 6 years. And she is great for sort of CFO level stuff. I got way too involved with the day-to-day stuff here. So I now don't do any of that. Thankfully, Zach has taken over the daily QuickBooks inputting, paying the bills, etc. So I actually still sign the checks, so I am part of it, but I'm not doing the day to day. But I have been spending quite a bit of time, obviously getting the business in the last year prepared for sale. So that was a lot because at that I didn't know that I would have an employee coming in a year ago. Right now, I thought I was going to open market. So there was a lot of work and really becoming understanding of where I was at financially. Thankfully, in a pretty strong place, especially last year, and now this year will be even better. And then I think the next thing for me has really just been the 12/12 report is something that I like a lot. I really like having a dashboard. So I'm not with the same dashboard that I was, the Microsoft BI one from before, but I'm hoping to find one again, and because that to me is critical, and I think everybody should have that, and that would be part of my
So a couple
measurement.
things that I'm going to pause on you because you're going to get it way ahead of people. So dashboard essentially allows you to look at both financial key indicators as well as other key indicators like performance key indicators from your management software, and right. So you're looking
Yep.
at like what's the best data. And certainly for those of you out there who have EOS, you're familiar with the data component of your weekly meeting and being able to go over a metric or assigning a metric per person and things like that. So, okay, sorry, I had to interrupt
That's
there
okay.
because you started talking about business intelligence, and I'm like, okay, nobody's gonna know what BI is. We need to talk about that a little bit. But
Yeah.
very cool.
Well, and I didn't know any of that until a few years ago. So for sure, I think that's just being able to take the step out and working on the business and seeing the difference. And then also now as we transition, that I can show that to somebody and make it sense for him versus us just kind of wallowing around and not really knowing, again, looking at the responding rather than planning. I mean, that's why I certainly was a responder for a lot of years because I was so busy working in the business. And now it's exciting to plan the business.
So this will be very interesting. So we've been speaking about like kind of getting it all out, and what keeps you up at night, and some SWOT and some all that, understanding where your financials have been the last couple of years. So now you're at the point where you're turning and you're starting to plan the new year. Do you anticipate? I know my plan is to come out and visit you in January. Do you anticipate having your leaders actually help you to establish financial goals for the year?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we have already been talking about that. I mean, and the ARA has the Rentalytics, and so I'm using that as kind of my baseline. That it's been fun to do 25% growth 2 years in a row, but I know realistically that is not probably going to happen again for a
Great
bit.
job, though.
I know,
Amazing.
crazy. So so I'm we're slowing down to I'm guessing is about a 5% growth this coming year, perhaps. I will be happy that if we can stay where we are and not lose. So 5% growth from where we are right now would be great. So with that in mind, and not knowing what the economy is really going to do, some people think it's going to crash, others don't think so much. So I'm happy to see that, and talking to a lot of rental folks out there, everybody seems to think there's going to be a slowdown, but not a major turn down. So so I think that's we've talked about that, and what we want to do equipment wise is where they really are a part of that. Is what's that look like for 23 investments in equipment, because we want to keep growing the fleet but not go crazy and put us into a cash crunch. Getting a hold of equipment is still a nightmare, so we've got stuff on order that we hope to see in 23.
Yeah.
But
Well, there's so many big issues to think about, like especially with fleet and category of assets and your ability to service and maintain those assets, and again be able to store those assets, right? So if your utilization is going to start dropping because you've been buying fleet to match your 25% growth every year, right? So it becomes a challenge on a whole bunch of levels. So that's the kind of stuff that starts keeping you up at night. You start to write down these as issues, right? We call them, in the peer groups, we have roundtable conversations around those issues to help resolve them. But in your business with your leadership team, you will have this issues list that you'll work through to achieve your annual goal. So I guess what's cool is, especially with your bookkeeper, pulling her in with the pro forma, identifying, hey, some of these expenses might go up, right? So you've experienced inflation, I'm sure, the last 2 years, correct?
Yes.
So
we did do a pretty sizable rental rate increase in the beginning of this year. We took quite a bit of time and looked around the country at different people's pricing and kind of decided where we needed to be compared to them. And that has gone well for us this year. We really didn't have any pushback, which was good. And but now, in this year, our prices have gone, not our prices to us, our vendor pricing has gone up quite a bit, and it's really frustrating when at the ARA show in Las Vegas in the fall of 21, we get quoted a rate, and by the time it was going to show up here this summer, fall, when we got stuff, I mean, it was 25% higher than what my quote was back at the time. And it's fascinating. They're not saving that, they're like, yeah, our prices went up. And I'm like, so that's hard for us to recover so we are also going to do we're not going to go across the board like we did in 22, but we are doing a price increase in the areas where we've seen the most in the equipment price changes going up. And so we are, and that's something for years I just sort of went, it all looks pretty good, I don't know how to go. Now I'm watching it much closer, the pricing of equipment and rental rates. So so that we will have some price changing, because we have to, because we're paying a lot more.
So you're checking all the boxes on this podcast, so I appreciate it. You discuss personal and financial freedom. You discuss leadership and management change and evolution. You talked about your fleet and your asset plan. Obviously, two other big ones are people costs. How do you feel about compensation, benefits, what you're facing there? Do you feel like, it's going to continue to be a super challenge, or is it going to be something that is you kind of got a handle on because you're in regular conversation with your employees?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I just did year-end meetings individually with each employee, and there were some that got a sizable bump up for 23. They will get because I needed to bring them up to what we thought they were worth, but also there was starting to be pressure on us. I live in not great, but I live in one of the most expensive places in the country, if not the most expensive. So the cost of living here is brutal. So, I don't get to pay people in the $13-12 range. I pay high schoolers $18 to walk through the door. So, so anybody that's been with me for 6-8 years now with very good knowledge is making a industry high rate wage, but I don't have a choice on that. I have to do that. But we also, and then so everybody got at least a cost of living increase this year, but some of them got some pretty sizable. But one of the things I'm doing is, I will definitely, everybody's getting very nice year-end bonuses because of the growth we've had this year. And then, for me going forward with them is we're doing, we didn't have a 401k for the past number of years. I had my whole staff rolled over and I got all these young guys. And at first they just didn't really think or ask, or I couldn't get them to do it. But now they're getting that. So for 23, they're going to have profit sharing with that new 401k as well. And so I think it'll be good. I'm trying to make sure they all know that they're valued and let them have a plan and be part of the plan.
That's awesome. So tremendous commitment to the employee side, and obviously 50% of every expense in a rental operation is related to an employee cost. So I think that's undervalued and under committed to in terms of communication. So good for you on that. All right, last piece, and this is huge for Aspen Rent-All, and that is constraints around facility and yard, right? So when I think about your business, I do go around the country and I see Southern California, I see Northern California, I see Washington, the state, with severe facility yard constraints and costs. How do you deal with that with regard to you grew 25% the last 2 years, each year. So how is that happening with your space constraints?
Well, I bought a new property in 2014 and I went from a half an acre to 2 acres.
Wow.
And it was a big investment because real estate here is stupidly expensive. But thank God I got in when I did, because this past fall, my property was looked at. We got it valued, and the valuation came in at 4 times what I paid for it in 24.
Holy cow.
So
That's
I'm not selling the property, but it's good to know that it's grown that much. I thought I might be if I was going to be to an outside buyer, and they may want everything. So that's why we did it. But that didn't come together, and that's fine for me. But yeah, this property has gotten extremely valuable, although there's nothing else I can do because to try and find more space, there's just nothing. That's why my value's gone up so much. Commercial real estate here is really, really tight. So now at this 2 acres, I could use 4. So it's constant, and if something's not earning its space, it doesn't stay on this property. The guys are in full agreement with me on that. If something's a dog, it doesn't stay. So we really watch that ROI because this property is tight. If I could find some storage area to do some off-season storage, obviously we're very seasonal, so there's a lot of product on here that like ground heaters that only work in the winter. So if they could go off in the summer and give us some more space, but we store these things. They're hidden all over behind the warehouses and whatnot in the off season. So, yeah. And then as you know, what a nightmare I went through. My county is very, very particular. So it cost an arm and a leg to get through all the rules that I had to do to even buy this property. So, so we don't have a lot of freedom just to do what we want on this property. They're pretty tough on us.
Well, and again, that's something we'll look at. And obviously going forward with your leadership team, you will be discussing that as an issue, right? So it's stuff that keeps you up at night. How do we make things happen? The processes that you have in your rental business, how do we improve them in such a way that it can take advantage of or at least deal with the constraints that you're facing on your facility. But anyway, we do have to end it here, but I appreciate your time today. I want you to have a very happy new year, but we appreciate you being here on Peer Talk.
Well, thank you. This has been fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here in about a month and doing this annual planning. I think it will be a great lead off to the new structure of my business.
Awesome. Well, Happy New Year, everybody, from Peer Talk.
Happy New Year.
View your industry data like never before. Gain insights, view real-time KPIs, drive growth, unlock potential. When you join PeerTech, your data drives decisions. Why be satisfied with incomplete data when clear, responsive, real-time trends could be yours? Now is the time to start making insightful, data-driven decisions for your business. PeerTech.
You've been listening to Peer Talk from Peer Executive Groups, produced and directed by Noah Crowley and hosted by Dan Crowley. Subscribe to this podcast for notifications of future episodes of Peer Talk.